This video is going to be my third preview of the Ravens' Week 7 visit to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Monday Night Football. I've done two prior previews, one of them on Zion McCollum, a rising young corner that plays basically left outside corner for Tampa Bay. And then Saturday morning had a preview that focused on Tampa Bay's defense and maybe what the Ravens could get accomplished against them. This one's going to focus on a Bucs offense that is third in the NFL in scoring right now, 29.7 points per game, so roughly 30. They have allowed 17 sacks, but nonetheless, Baker Mayfield is very efficient, playing with a ton of confidence. You can see it in how decisive he is with his throws. You can also see it after the play at times. He reminds me of the Baker Mayfield that we saw in college. Very, very confident. At times, maybe some would say bordering on cocky, but for me, it's good to see him playing well because of how his career ended in Cleveland and then moved on to L.A. I don't want to see him play well against the Ravens on Monday night, obviously, but chances are he will. Look, they've scored 30 points or more in 4 games, including 51 against the Saints last week. Now, we all know the Saints defense, the Saints team overall is not a quality football team. So how much does that 51 points impact this game against the Ravens? I'm not sure that it really does. I think the Ravens are a better defense than the one that's allowing, I think, 24.8 points per game. Nonetheless, Tampa Bay's offense, in my opinion, has some specific pieces and specific concepts that they do very well that can threaten the Ravens' defense, particularly our nickel and dime sets. Also, Tampa Bay is exceptional at screens, in my opinion. I will not focus on that in this video, but I wanted to get that thought out. I'm going to focus on 3 elements, maybe 4, I guess, the Evans/Godwin dynamic and the difference in their play this year in 2024. Baker Mayfield being used as a scrambler and actually on 2 design run plays. I'll show you one of them that was against Detroit, a QB draw that he took 11 yards for a touchdown. I think the only touchdown scored in the second half between those 2 teams. I could be wrong there. What's interesting about the offense is they're 8th in the NFL in rushing per game, a lot of it from 11 personnel, at least in my observation. I don't have every play saved. It's impossible for me to do that with the amount of film study videos that I try to get out on YouTube and running a Discord for 2 different teams. I think that the Ravens defense in the last 2 or 3 years has struggled more against the run out of 11 personnel groupings, basically from our nickel defense. I wonder if that might be a focus for the Bucs on Monday night. Also going to talk about Mike Evans, Baker Mayfield use as a scrambler, how efficient Chris Godwin has been so far this year. His numbers are ridiculous. So let's get the film started with Evans, who of course has had some injuries. He's dealing with hamstring stuff the last couple of weeks. Early in the season, week 1 against Washington, he looked fantastic. They're putting him in the slot a lot. His career catch percentage, a little bit surprising to me at times to go look at the data, is 57.7%. When I saw that it was at 59.6 or 59.8 for this year, I was a little surprised. Like, that seems low for a guy of his caliber. And then to go look at his career catch percentage, I was like, well, it's even lower. We're actually above what his typical catch percentage is. So far this year, 25 of 42. He does have 5 touchdowns, and Baker Mayfield is clearly willing to go to him in some of these situations where it's obviously man or one-on-one to the backside. They've gone quads to the bottom side of the screen against Washington. Baker Mayfield knows exactly where he's going to go. It's a beautiful ball Evans is able to clear. You can imagine as a Ravens fan seeing him matched up against Stevens or Wiggins at times on the outside. Our hearts are going to stop when the ball is thrown deep outside against those 2 guys, because so far we haven't been able to necessarily defend those concepts well against high-quality receivers that are even smaller in terms of stature and length and reach than Evans offers at 6'4" with a really long wingspan, if I recall correctly. Now, he hasn't been tremendously efficient this year, to be honest with you. I think that's the injury last week against the Saints kind of clouds that judgment a little bit. He only had 2 catches, I think early, in fact, and then kind of went out of the game. Mayfield threw, I think, 3 interceptions against the Saints last week. He does have 5 on the year. This is an extremely underrated corner in the NFL, if you ask me. Paulson Adebo, I don't think the metrics necessarily rank him very high this year, but he's someone who, when you watch the film of, he's just a playmaker. He's a difficult guy to deal with, but Tampa Bay, like I said, was able to get 51 points on the board against him. I think I actually have this one later, but I like that he's basically now decided to trail Mike Evans. This is intentional, to get underneath of it because he knows he has safety help over the top here. I would say this is a coverage style that the Ravens need to look at with Evans. At times, you can't do it every single snap because it's basically devoting 2 players for one, when the Bucs go trips to one side like you see on this play. If you're a little unfamiliar with what I'm talking about, normally in these sets you would have a trips to one side to the field and only one receiver backside. Actually do have a tight end here. So this kind of lends itself to the Ravens' dime look if it's 2-by-2. It's a little easier to accomplish this task, basically doubling trail man with a safety over the top against Evans. It's a little easier to accomplish that from a 2-by-2 formation when the Bucs go 2 receivers to one side, 2 receivers to the other. One of those 4 receivers I just mentioned might actually be a tight end. The point is when they go 3-by-1, it's less difficult to hide it. It's less difficult, or it's more difficult to hide it, excuse me. They certainly do a lot to try to get him open at times. This is him matched up against Alontae Taylor last week. Does this film from last week against New Orleans represent what we're going to see in terms of explosiveness for Mike Evans? I mean, he did miss 2 practice days. I think limited participant on Saturday, so who knows exactly what we're going to get from an Evans standpoint. If he's 100% healthy, I think he's a matchup problem for us on the outside at times. Maybe not a high efficiency in terms of 8 catches on 10 targets, something like that, but a guy that makes plays down the field, particularly in the red zone. Speaking of the red zone and confidence, Baker Mayfield, look, he's got 15 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, 71% completion percentage. He's got the highest yards per attempt in his career, also the highest touchdown percent in his career. 7.9% of his passes are going for touchdowns. But this has surprised me. I noticed it against the Lions in week 2, and then even a little bit from the film from week 1 against Washington. Some of these 4-man rushes, he's doing a nice job of getting out of there and scrambling for first downs. This one was close. It's a 2nd and 15. He's able to get 12 yards. But against Detroit, it was a killer. Late third quarter, I think early fourth quarter, he gets 2 scrambles. Well, 1 scramble and then a quarterback draw. This is a 2nd and 8. It seems to come in certain situations. I think 1st and 10, he's not really concerned with those things. These 2nd and 3rd downs. This is a 3rd and 4. And the Lions are bringing 4-man pressure scheme. You can see that they've dedicated Rachaad White to help out on Aiden Hutchinson. I think they had a backup right tackle in that game. It's a really good offensive line for the Bucs. I think everyone should know that. It's pretty obvious. This is an 11-yard scramble on a 3rd and 4. He makes one guy miss. Super impressive play. And then the very next play call tells you what the offensive staff thinks of Baker Mayfield's mobility. I believe this is the only offensive touchdown scored in the second half. I might be wrong, but it's immediately after that 3rd and 4 scramble where he's able to convert and get the first down, and they go to a QB draw. We should be familiar with this. We run this concept with the Ravens pretty much in that part of the field. So we're going to have to limit our looks, number one, in terms of a 4-1 in the box. And they can put us in a tremendous amount of conflict by putting Mike Evans or Godwin in the slot to one side. You can see that now they've got both of those guys in the slot to either side, creating a 4-1 in the box. 1-man advantage already from a blocking standpoint. 5 offensive linemen, and the quarterback makes 6. So 6 on 5, if they get those numbers, you could see that play run against us. We might have to be a little bit more disciplined with our defensive line, not necessarily take an approach like we took with Josh Allen, but it's a very real factor. Also a real factor is Godwin. He is surging. He's always been a quality NFL receiver. I think he's 2nd in Bucs history, franchise history, in touchdowns, only to Evans, by the way. This year, he's 43 of 53 catching. 81% catch percentage. It's a really well-designed play. He's going to make it look like he's trying to stalk to the outside here and then take this route up the sideline. You guys are losing some of my annotations there, sorry. But hopefully you don't lose him on the play. He's got 5 touchdowns. With Evans being less efficient, Godwin at 81% catch percentage is perfectly timed for this team. What the Ravens need is to reduce his efficiency level. They got to slow him down. I mean, he's got 5 touchdowns along with Evans, like I said earlier, and his usage on 3rd down is tremendous. He's able to make catches on 3rd down and create a new set of downs for Tampa Bay to deal with. The rushing attack, it's well documented. They're using 3 running backs, 3 guys with over 150 yards each. I think Irving has like 380, something like that. Like I said earlier, they are 8th in the NFL in rushing yards per game. This efficiency with Godwin the Ravens have got to look at what matchup they want there. It's my guess is probably going to be Humphrey against Godwin, which means that you try to double Evans more and basically live with some of the other guys. The other way to get it accomplished, theoretically, would be to put Kyle Hamilton on him. I'm not sure that that's a matchup that we want, but his efficiency level, when you watch the film, it's like how many incomplete passes are even thrown to this guy's way. In fact, 2 of the incompletions, I think, are essentially just throwaways. So that 43 of 53 catching could really be 43 of 51. This one, I want to focus on putting him in motion. It's a 3rd and 3 from week 1 against Washington. He's just winning clean, absolutely clean on a lot of these 3rd downs, in-breaking routes, out-breaking routes. It seems like Baker Mayfield looks there first, and with the Ravens' propensity to break, with Kyle Hamilton's propensity to break on the first route, I think that may actually be a good matchup on 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5, even though Godwin, you would think, would have superior, longer speed to Hamilton. Hamilton is devastating against a route that breaks once, meaning it's not a double move. An out route, a slant, things like that, Hamilton defends those extremely well. I'm not saying all game he should be on him, but perhaps some of those 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4 situations, if we want to double Evans, then putting Hamilton on Godwin might be the play. Mayfield has 5 interceptions this year, had 3 last week. This one is one that I already showed you, the undercut out of what I think is trail man by Paulson Adebo. A couple of random ones. I don't think he's careless with the football, but they throw the football a lot. They've ran a lot of offensive plays this year, so there's probably just more opportunities for him to throw picks. The Ravens have played well against Baker Mayfield in the past. We certainly know him quite well. I think his ability to spread the ball around to multiple guys thus far this year has been an asset, obviously, for Tampa Bay. He's willing to throw the ball to multiple guys. In some of these big situations, shutting off Godwin and Evans has got to be, if you ask me, the focus. Perhaps even opening us up to Mayfield being able to scramble. It's just a sheer mathematical equation at that point. If we're dedicating 2 people to Evans and then using one of our other best defenders, it's also possible that the Ravens put Humphrey on Godwin and then double Evans with 2 other guys that would be, quote, less sticky in coverage than Marlon Humphrey is. Taking away those options, look, is it going to stop this Bucs offense? No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that I think that might be in our best interest when we do get in some of those 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4 situations. Keep our options open and available, especially if Evans is playing well. Now, in terms of the run game, they do a couple of things out of 11 personnel that do concern me. Almost Rams-esque, whereby it's 11 personnel, and they're using one of the receivers, oftentimes it's Godwin, to cut across the heels of the offensive line, almost like a split zone or hide concept where he could slide out into the flats on a pass play, or he could block on the backside, very similar to what Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp do with the Rams. You can see they're trying to cut off this backside defensive end and get Godwin up to backside inside linebacker, or in this case, backside safety. I think it's Jonathan Abram, setting up a natural cutback for Tucker. It is good to see Tucker playing well. I think he's a guy who had health concerns that dropped him in the draft last year. Perhaps I'm misremembering. I hope he doesn't play well Monday night against the Ravens, obviously. But to see him have a big game against the Saints was pretty cool. These 11 personnel run concepts on 1st and 10 specifically, first down specifically, are situations where I think it's been a relative weakness of the Ravens defense, both when Mike McDonald was here and this season. I understand we've stopped the run at an incredibly high rate. I think on first down we need a number of run-stopping guys in the game. Brent Urban. I mean, all of our defensive tackles are playing well from a Pierce, Matabike, and Travis Jones standpoint. Stopping or limiting the run on 1st and 10, I think, puts us in a better situation once we do get them to 3rd down. So it's 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, and the coverage paradigm offers a wider net of options for us to utilize. Their run concepts. Look, using 3 running backs is really cool. Like, credit to them. We don't do that, obviously, because we have a Superman and Derrick Henry back there. We don't need to necessarily rely on other guys because he's so good. Credit to them for having 3 guys, Irvin, Tucker, and Rachaad White, who's extremely physical, and I've seen him play for the better part of 2 years. He's a fun running back to watch. Hopefully the Ravens are able to limit the run game. We're number one in the NFL at doing so. If we can make this team one-dimensional, put them in as many 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7 situations as possible, and hopefully our offense gets points on the board. I'm quite sure that both fan bases of the Ravens and the Bucs have the same thought coming into this game, which is this. If we can get enough stops to hold them, the other team, to less than 24 points, our offense will win us the game. Perhaps that's a new perspective for Ravens fans at times. I don't think it should be. Our offense is here to stay. For the Ravens, turnovers, limiting them offensively, forcing one or maybe two by the Bucs and stopping the run sounds like an easy or at least simple formula to go out there and execute. I think it's a really good Bucs team. Are they reminiscent of the Tampa Bay team we went down and beat 2 years ago, where we threw the ball, I think, 26 times, maybe 25 times in the first half, and then really wore their defensive front down? I'm not so sure. I really like how Baker Mayfield is playing from an efficiency standpoint. He seems to be playing with a lot of force, and those scrambles, I think, are an indicator for that. I think the Bucs offense has some specific things that they do well that could attack this Ravens defense. Their 11 personnel run game, Evans on the outside as a potential threat with deep balls could force us into some of those double team situations whereby Baker Mayfield it opens up parts of the field for someone else, number one, or number two, gives him the opportunity to scramble. We can't let Baker Mayfield scramble for first downs. Those are like bonus downs that they get, bonus series of plays, I should say. If we get him into a 3rd and 4 or a 3rd and 3, we can't allow him to get outside the pocket. There may have to be times where we take a little bit more of a conservative approach. I'm basically talking about our outside linebackers / DNs stunting or going to the inside with an inside move. There may be times where we have to avoid that because if Evans is playing well, if he's healthy, if he's anywhere near 100%, him matched up against Stevens on some of those back shoulder throws or throws down the sideline, or Wiggins on the other side, who's smaller and playing well, but probably not a good matchup for Evans, I think gives the Tampa Bay Bucs an option to go to on 3rd down to try to possess the ball longer and put some points on the board. I think the Ravens have a real opportunity to go down. If we want to get where we want to be at the end of the season, 11, 12 wins, 13 maybe, we've got to go down and get a win against this Tampa Bay football team. Limiting turnovers on offense, running the football ourselves seems quite basic. On the other side, forcing a turnover or two by Tampa Bay and slowing down or almost outright stopping their run game seems like the best way to make them one-dimensional and get out to another 10-point lead where we hopefully can hold on in the second half. I appreciate you guys' time, man. This one almost ended up being, a little bit more commentary with limited film study, focusing on some of the bigger elements and the things that the Bucs do. I didn't mean to omit their tight ends or some of the other run concepts that they utilize out of 12 and 13 personnel. In any case, if you enjoyed this preview and you think other Ravens fans would appreciate it as well, please consider grabbing a link to this video, sharing it out on social media to help this content get more reach.